Okay, everybody, I'm here with Rich. He's a business attorney in St. Augustine, Florida. How are you doing today?
Doing all right, Ahmad. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So we're here today to talk about business law, running your business, mistakes that you make, traps that you fall into. First thing I want to get into though is, you replaced it was a Trans Am, it was I read it in your bio. I really love this piece about you the most. You're saying you're no stranger to hard work. I want to know about how does hard work play into the success of a business?
So hard work. I like to tell even my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old, there's no substitution for time, and hard work and time kind of go very close together because a lot of people are always looking for the shortcut, right? I'm going to buy this franchise, or I'm going to spend all this money on marketing, or I'm going to do whatever it is. And hard work and time are the two components that often correlate, where if you work hard enough and you become good enough at that one thing that you do, eventually, if you can give yourself enough of a runway, uh, that will pay off. And I've seen it happen every different which way. And it has for me. I mean, I started this business with virtually no experience working in a law firm, not a single client, and I'm doing it 10 years later. So hard work is the key, and it has to be coupled with time because you're a living, breathing human being. You're not going to be able to work 24 hours a day. So uh, you just need that extra bit of time to eventually reach your objectives.
Okay. I like that answer. That's very good. And why did you decide to go into business law? You said you had virtually no experience in a law firm. Like there's plenty of things that make a bunch of money that you could have went into, you know?
Totally. So the short version of my story is when I was at Belmont, which is where I started my undergrad, I had a lot of mentors and professors that were attorneys. Some of them practiced and were adjuncts. Some of them weren't practicing at all. And so as a kid, kind of coming out of school in the Great Recession, at least in undergrad, I kind of figured a graduate degree was the right move. And it was MBA or law school. And I had all these mentors that had these law degrees. And I was like, hey, I like the way they think. There's something you get there that I want. And so hence I chose law school. Now, while I was in law school, I started other businesses, mainly a lighting business. And we did that, my partner and I, and it unceremoniously ended. And when it unceremoniously ended, I interviewed for no less than a half dozen jobs, almost relocated back to Nashville from Florida, had one job interview that was like 5 months long. And at the end of all of these things, these folks would always say, we don't know what to do with you. You're a lawyer, you have all this operational background experience in business. You're also still in your 20s. Like, we don't know what to do with you. And so I made a decision that I was unemployable, and I had this law degree and I was licensed to practice. And I said, screw it, I'll open a law firm that happens, and I'll run it the way that I would run any other business. And I'll focus on my key strength, which is knowing how to do business. In my lighting business, we started from the ground up, and I was the ops guy, and my partner was the sales guy. And so it was my job to do everything from manage our overseas sourcing manufacturing partners in China and Mexico and elsewhere, down to dealing with customers on the ground who didn't understand how to use our products, and everything in between. And so I said, well, I know a lot about business, and I have myself, in a very short period of time, experienced a lot of things. So I'll take that, apply it to a law practice, and see how it goes. And so far, it's gone all right.
That's for sure. And okay, so as a business owner, right, like me, for example, how important is it to protect yourself from future litigation?
There's a saying that my wife once told me that I use every day. I've probably used it 3 times today in consultations. You can't stop a bird from landing on your head, but you can stop it from building a nest. So what does that mean? Well, in my world, I can't stop litigation. Somebody will eventually sue you for something. But what I can do is help you build out the right processes, procedures, documents, etc., to mitigate their ability to build that nest or like to extend that litigation or give credence to these usually baseless claims that they may or may not have. These can be employees, these can be a customer, these can be any number of things. But if you have the right processes and procedures, legal and non legal, you can really mitigate or shorten that litigation window. So for a lot of my clients, I just had one here. Eh, they want the cheat code to prevent anyone from ever suing them. And unfortunately, I always have to tell them somebody will eventually sue you. It's a matter of how quickly are we going to be able to get it over with. Um, Creating those affirmative defenses, creating those facts that put us in the best position to defend ourselves. Those are the things that business owners need to focus on uh, in order to really protect themselves or insulate themselves from really what is protracted litigation, which is really the thing that everybody wants to avoid, that 2, 3, 5 year litigation where you're spending tens of thousands of dollars or you've exhausted your defense funds from your insurance company. Um, Getting sued just comes with the territory of being a business owner. Have good insurance and address your risk points early. That's the best thing that I can tell people and do tell people on a regular basis.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so, like, what are the biggest mistakes that I probably make a lot of these, but uh, if you could tell me, like, what are the biggest mistakes that a business owner could make that actually potentially lead them into litigation and not put them in the best position to defend themselves when it happens?
So the biggest mistakes I see, or at least the most common ones, um, so there's two different ones. There's internal, being employee centric, and then there's external, meaning customer centric. Both always have to do with management of expectations. So if you're just using a generic contract, for example, or someone or a contract you stole from somebody else, and that contract isn't really written in a way that when you go to your client, you're able to walk them through all of the things and why it's there. And even if there is some legalese, like being able to kind of walk them through and explain it, if and when there's an issue and you didn't manage their expectations, they don't even really read the contract. They probably don't even care. They expected something, you expected something, and those expectations didn't meet. Now we have conflict. So a lot of times for my clients, if you're a business owner and you're in a position where you have a lot of contracts, having a contract that reads really well that allows your client to fully and completely understand what they're doing and why they're doing it and acts almost as like a secondary sales pitch is the best way to manage expectations. And then the same thing goes on the employee side. A lot of times employees don't understand what their job description is, or they don't understand if they're underperforming, or they don't understand um, a lot of the wide variety of things that happen in the day-to-day life of an employee. And making the time to do performance reviews, making the time to create job descriptions, um, having the uncomfortable conversations with somebody when they're underperforming, those types of things again align expectations to prevent conflict. Uh, Otherwise, if somebody doesn't understand something, that's when they go find an attorney to help them understand, and that results in litigation, which results in discovery and depositions and everything else. And then it's the judge's job to determine who's right.
Yeah,
So again, it comes down to management of expectations to the extent possible. Again, you're never going to be able to do it 100% of the time, but if you create the right processes and procedures, a lot of times people again are looking for that shortcut, or they're chasing money really quickly, and they don't manage expectations, or they grow too quickly, and that's ultimately where things happen. They didn't follow the right procedure. They didn't do this, that, or the other. A perfect example. I love telling stories. I have an artist client. One of his pieces is behind me. We had to sue a record label. It's in federal court, so it's out there in the public. You can go read it. We had to sue Goatee Records in Nashville because they filmed an entire music video in front of his mural and didn't ask for permission. And why did they do that? Well, they found themselves in a situation where they didn't follow their routine procedures, and so it, they could have mitigated that, but ultimately that settled, which is good for everybody and was the right result. But that situation was only created because while they had a compliance department, they didn't fully and completely uh, utilize that process. And as a result, we ended up in a conflict where we had certain expectations about my client's intellectual property rights, and they had certain expectations about their liability. And so we had to litigate it. And that was the way it worked. So that's a very singular example of a simple set of expectations or a simple email on the front end would have prevented years worth of conflict. So again, managing expectations, making sure you're doing the right things in the right order, and you can avoid a lot of mistakes.
Okay, and that's definitely a few notes I took down there. I didn't get all of them, so if you could make like an ebook or handbook or checklist, that'd be really helpful for me.
Yeah.
And so, okay, well, you touched on intellectual property there. Like, what's the role of intellectual property? Does it just apply to an artist's painting, or does it apply to much more than just that?
Moral of the story is every business has intellectual property. You may not think that, but you do. And if you don't currently, you should. Intellectual property comes in predominantly four main categories. The first one being copyrights. That's the one that a lot of people are familiar with related to movies, books, television shows, music, that sort of thing. Another one is trademarks. Most people know about them but don't fully understand them and often conflate them with copyrights. But trademarks are how you identify products in the world, right? So these are your brand identities, your Nikes, your Adidas, your Under Armours, your pick a brand, it's trademarked. It also can be phrases. Um, so easy a caveman can do it, et cetera, et cetera. The difference between a copyright and a trademark is a trademark can last forever, essentially. So if you value your brand, you should probably have a trademark. The third big category is patents. A little bit more specialized. Not everybody's business model applies to patents. And then you have the other one, the last category, which is kind of a catch-all, trade secrets or um, sort of confidentiality type stuff. So this is the recipe to Pepsi, the recipe to the spices for KFC, the things that we don't want to patent because we don't want to put it in the public, but we also want the ability to protect it, and we protect that via confidentiality agreements, non-disclosures, and those sorts of things. Those are your big four. Um, Everybody's got them. You have them. I have them. It's a matter of uh, how you're utilizing them and how you're building value in your business with them. And oftentimes an attorney can help you with that.
That's good to know. Okay, and I want to go back on and touch on some of the things that you were mentioning with the businesses that you were running before you started your law firm. Have you always had entrepreneurship in your blood, or did that just kind of?
I don't know how it got there because neither of my parents were entrepreneurs. My parents were very much a go grind it out in the 9 to 5 uh, and do your time and retire one day. Uh, so I don't know how I got there. I think it was just the product of exposure, and I saw a lot of people do it, and I worked. For example, one of my first quote unquote real jobs is I'm a guitar player, and I was, I think, 16 or 17, and a new music store opened within walking distance from my house, like down the road. It's about a mile and a half away. And so I just hung out there because I loved it and I would play. And then eventually I developed a relationship with the owner because I noticed he was the only one working. And I was like, hey, do you need anybody to work here? And sure enough, he did. And so then I started picking up shifts. And then one day he's like, you want to teach guitar lessons? And I was like, sure. And then as an 18-year-old, I had 35 guitar students. Uh, and I like to say I was making the most money I've ever made in my life because they were all paying cash and I had no bills. Um, so uh, I think from that experience and from other experiences I had in terms of looking at other people and what they were doing, I just kind of caught the bug and away I went. I don't know that I could do anything else now. Not sure if that directly answers your question, but I think it just kind of happened by exposure.
No, no, I did. It's a good answer. It's a good answer. And where can they find you online? Um, if you're like me, for example, and you make all the mistakes that you mentioned, where can you find where can I find you online?
So STAUGLAW, saintaglaw.com or St. Augustine Law Group, all one string together will do it. The office number is also really easy to remember. So 904-990-7777. We're here 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday, unless courts are closed and we take the day off. Um, but yeah, that's the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Okay. And also, if you're having some troubles and stuff, you can check out his YouTube channel. He has a good bit of videos on there. St. Augustine Law Group, PA. And yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so much for your time. And most people don't want to spend this much time with me, and I appreciate you doing it.
no worries, man.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.